This morning, we're going to talk about logos. So yes, it is Valentine's Day. Let's see, who do we have? I saw everybody coming in and was watching you all. We have Bill and we have Rob and we have Pedro who's joining us. I think Pedro's been with us a time or two now. Hashem is along for the ride. Arnie's here. Ray's here. Art's here. Sam's along. Steven's here. Tammy's here. Let's see. Marshall's here. Let's see, who else do we have? Ken's here. Good morning, Ken. Good morning, Michael. And Glenna and Pete and Sylvie. Good crowd. Michelle's here. Let's see, Clarence is along as well. So let's see, who else do we have? Hey, Eric, good to see you, man. Carol's here. Let's see. Anybody else? Anybody else want to introduce themselves as we get started this morning? All right, as I had said just a minute ago, I put the assets in a single spot so they would be really easy to find. Didn't realize how many worksheets we were going to end up with and what a shuffle that was going to be to keep track of them. So I put them all together in one spot, make it really easy. And then as I update that, the other thing is I want to be able to put those with the replay videos. And having to find each asset every time for the replay videos was kind of a nightmare. So I thought we'd put them on a single page, make it really easy for everybody. Good morning, Tyree. Good to see you as well. Okay. So this morning's webinar is about logos. For some of you, it may not be morning, it might be afternoon, but today's webinar is about logos. It's creating your logo. We've been working through this brand worksheet. Hello, Simple. Simon, it's good to see you as well. So we've been working through this branding webinar, and we've looked at the customer journey. We've looked at the assets that you need for that. We've built an avatar for that customer. We have focused on your brand and what problems does your brand solve. And we've worked our way through this. We've talked about colors and we've talked about typefaces. Today, we're going to pull those pieces together to create a logo. Probably what we'll get done today is we'll focus our attention on the types of logos so that you'll understand what logo might communicate best the message that you want to get across. So let's plunge in here. Let's start talking about, good morning, Barbara. Let's start talking about creating your logo. What we're basically going to cover are these four things: the different types of logos, some truths about logos, the possibility of doing it yourself or hiring someone to do it. And so we'll just walk our way through this and we'll take a look at the various things that we need to understand about logos. At its core, a logo is the emanation of your core values and brand promise. Because that's true, because your logo is an emanation of your core values and your brand promise, we had to establish those first. Does that make sense? I mean, it's very important that we establish those first in order for us to establish the logo. I remember I got a phone call. I used to do entrepreneur counseling for the state of Alabama for the Small Business Administration. And I got a phone call from a guy one day. He said, I need to create a logo. And can you meet with me? So I met with him. We met at the office there, and he said, this is what I would like to do for a logo. I said, what's your product? Well, I can't tell you that. I'm still in the process of fleshing out that product. Well, what promise does it fulfill? I'm not exactly sure yet. You can't do that. You've got to have those things clearly established before you create a logo. Does that make sense to everybody? If you don't know where you're going, what value is your logo going to be? So we looked at those core values and the brand promise. We had to establish that in order for us to get started. Now, I'm going to take you through some other people's logos, and we're going to take a look at some things that you'll find and how they reflect those core values and brand promise. Let's take a look at Airbnb for a moment. Airbnb is very simply, in very simple terms, Airbnb is about people going to places that they love, right? Very, very simple. That's the core value. That's the promise that Airbnb makes. And so this is they kind of sketched out the process here, and then this became the logo. It wasn't their first logo, but this became their logo. Now, do you see how that logo actually reflects their core value and their brand promise? That makes sense to everybody? They've taken that core value and they've incorporated that into the logo, made it really easy. Okay. So let's take a look. There's 7 different types of logos. And we're going to look at each one of those types of logos. And we'll start with the emblem. The emblem is the first of the 7 logo types. And an emblem looks like this. It's the maybe the oldest logo of its kind. Been around since, the Dark Ages. And it was the family crest, the seal, the king's seal, those kinds of things all fit in this category of emblem. And the emblem gives you a very, very traditional feeling. Nothing more traditional than BMW or Harley Davidson or Warner Brothers. Starbucks is a new player to the market, but they took that same emblem concept and they incorporated that into their logo with the Starbucks coffee. And so it gives you that very, very traditional feeling, frequently used by schools, governments, those types of entities, and it can be used for a local business. It's great to have an emblem on the outside of a building. It gives you some identification. As I drive around the city of Huntsville, which is a very rapidly growing city, I still see just a handful of emblems around town. They're still being used in a few places. And I say still, don't misunderstand me, that an emblem might be the ideal logo for your business. But keep in mind that this reflects a traditional feeling. In Huntsville, we're very rapidly becoming a very progressive city in innovation and technology. And so you're seeing fewer and fewer of these things as you move around throughout the businesses inside of the city of Huntsville. Which is it's my backyard, and so it's the place where I look. Creating your logo, there's another type of logo. We have the word marks logo, and a word marks logo might be ideal for your business. Here's an example of word marks. Disney, that Disney signature, and as you look here, you'll see there's a whole bunch of these. Interestingly enough, I sit between NASA and Coca-Cola here in town, and so I see those emblems every single day. They're word mark emblems. They're made entirely of words. Coca-Cola is entirely a word. FedEx, all of these are just a single word. There's another thing that you notice that's really interesting about this. Coca-Cola is considered to be a single word, but you get the idea, right? So this is a word mark. It's a single word that defines that. Google, is there a word that is there a more identifiable word than Google that says absolutely nothing? Interesting, Sylvie, because Google changes their typography every single day with their Google. Although this is their traditional logo on their page, they change that This is the thing that they change every day too, which is kind of fascinating to me. But this suits all kinds of businesses. It's very straightforward. It's very simple. I'm going to talk about single words in just a little bit, and you'll see how important this is. This is really easy to do. It's really easy to design. You don't necessarily have to have someone design that for you. It's pretty easy. Nothing more simple than the NASA logo right here. And I see that all the time here in Huntsville. So word marks are the second type of logo that we have. The third type is a brand mark. A brand mark is a little bit different than a word mark. And so let's take a look at some examples of a brand mark. The first one, obviously, is Usign. Usign's a brand mark. It is a word and it has a brand mark with it. Okay, here's an example. Kickstand, the visual story mastery. That's an example of a word mark with a brand symbol. So you see that it's an icon plus a text. And so we call that a brand mark. It's kind of the best of both worlds. It takes both a mark or a symbol or an emblem or an icon of some type and combines that with a word, an easy to identify word. It's interesting, the history, and I've been associated with Bertrand Usign for a long, long time now. Started out with 3 words in the name, and then it kept getting smaller and smaller, and then it got down to Usign and then we've kept these last 4 letters and turned that into several other things: MockZine, LogoZine, Z Suite, those kinds of things. So it's easy once you have this to be able to move through those other things. So a brand mark is pretty easy to do. It's not too complicated. You pick a typeface, as Sylvie said earlier. You pick a typeface that works for your word, and then you match that with an icon that works for a brand mark. Does everybody understand what I mean when I say the difference between a word mark and a brand mark? Do you understand the difference between those and see where they might become easy for you to use either one of those two? This is actually a combination of 2. So, okay. Now, this is pretty easy. You might need somebody to design this piece right here for you, but we've already done the work necessary to do this part, right? So, and you can see how this is a reflection of Usign. Simple, there isn't even any caps in this. It's very simple logo, very simple design. Number 4 is abstract. And abstract is much, much more challenging. An abstract like the Nike logo right here, this swoosh mark, this is an abstract logo. Now, it's easily identifiable as Nike, but if you saw this for the very first time, would you have a clue what that was? You get away from the literal representation here into something that's completely abstract. And the completely abstract is more difficult. It's more technical to realize. There's a lot of effort that goes into making that abstract communicate something so that it does the work that a logo needs to do, and that is identify that brand and core value and brand promise with a particular symbol, with nothing else but just the symbol. And we'll talk about that just a little bit more in just a bit. It suits all kinds of businesses, but it's really, really challenging to make that logo communicate that brand promise for you. And I'm still not really sure why the swoosh is the Nike emblem, other than the fact that my first association with Nike was when I was running track. So apparently there's a connection, a communication there. So that's interesting. But if you're going to use an abstract logo, understand that there's some challenges with it, and you may want to consult with a professional to help you to realize the value of that brand. The next one is, so we've gone through emblems, word marks, brand marks, abstract. The next one is monograms. And we have a lot of monograms. Monograms are a really, really common form of a logo. When you think about home box office, HBO made that work for them. They took the 3-letter name home box office and put that into a 3-letter monogram, making it a single symbol, not complicated, not long, not strung out. This is Coco Chanel over here, Louis Vuitton, and McDonald's. And so it's a much more technical to realize. It's great if you can take the initials of a business and turn them into an acronym. That works really, really well. It gives a feeling of sophistication. This is a really, really cool logo. It's very basic, but it's a really cool logo. Would y'all agree with that? The home box office logo is, that's a pretty cool logo. And it works really, really well for them. But if it had said home box office, it would have been more complicated. Does that make sense to everybody? Trying to make sure that we understand that the logo has to fit that simplicity. Okay. The next, and number six, we're six in the list, right? Number six is mascots. And so mascots are a little tricky, but is there a more identifiable mascot than this one right here? A man made famous by a mouse. Or how about this one right here? Do y'all know who this is on this Pringles can? Y'all know who that is? You know anything about the history of the Pringles logo? This guy has a car show. He does a car show where he goes through this little, or Pringles all over Italy. That's cool. He does a car show. And the truth is, this mascot right here looks just like him. Sometime go to public television, scroll through there on a Saturday afternoon, and you'll discover the Pringles guy. He is he does old car shows. And he decided one day that it would be really, really cool to take potato chips and make them so that they could stack and developed Pringles. But he continues to do his car show. And that was pretty cool. So, but that's a mascot, very simple mascot, the Tony the Tiger. Rob just said a classmate of his developed the Tony the Tiger logo. Pretty cool. Those are pretty cool. Those are pretty cool logos. And mascot works really, really well. You know, this is the Monopoly mascot, and this is the Disney. I can just look at these mascots and tell you exactly what the brand is, right? But they're a little difficult. Again, it goes back. It's kind of like the abstract. If it's a big company, they can put a lot of push behind it. This guy was made famous by this goofy mustache that he has, which he still has to this day. But it worked really well in the mascot and works great on the Pringles can, you know? So if you're going to use a mascot, it's a little technical. You're going to need some help with it, and it may be more costly and more time consuming. Our goal in this course right now is to get you a logo and get you going as quickly as possible, right? All right, number seven. Number seven is a combination marks, and that's a little more complicated too. A combination mark is matching different types of logos. For example, you have a logo right here, which is a name. It's a word. It also has a symbol right here, and then it has a bit of a subtitle here. And so you'll see those. This is not a really good rendition of that, and I apologize for that. But this is a mixing and matching of logo styles into a combination mark. And that can also be a logo style for someone. A little more technical to realize, requires somebody to make this work, help you to make this work. You may require the skills of a graphic artist to be able to pull those pieces together. It does create a very unique look and a very unique feel. It is suitable for all kinds of businesses, and it can work really well for those things, okay? So those are the 7 types of logos. Hopefully, as we go through that, you'll see something that works for you to accomplish the goal that you have in mind, or did that 7 give you 6 too many choices? Having 7 logo types, does that help, or does it make it more complicated? I'm curious because I have a point that I'm trying to make here. I think it's good to know them. I think that's kind of what all of you are describing. But 7 options get very confusing. So you want to try to help the person that you're helping to brand, including yourself, to narrow those down to just a couple of things. And then you kind of pick from those couple of things which thing's going to work the best for you. For some of us, that fact that it's technical often gets too complicated. And so we'll skip that and we'll go to something that's a little bit simpler and easier to accomplish, right? I totally agree, Jason. Jason's just mentioned a recent industry event. They discussed avoiding cognitive overload, and that's true. This is I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. We live in a highly stimulated world to the point where we're almost attracted to a lack of that stimulation. And so what you'll discover is, if I can back up here for just a moment, this simplicity works really well. If that was on here, it would be really complicated, right? And we do suffer from stimulation fatigue. So let's talk about some misconceptions about logos. And the first one I want to deal with is the cost of a logo. So we're going to take a look at some very, very popular logos and see what they cost to create. All right. Coca-Cola spent $0 to create this simple little logo right here, Coca-Cola. $0. Maybe one of the most highly identified logos around the world. Cost $0. So a logo doesn't have to be expensive to work. Twitter bought an icon. They bought an icon and they've used it ever since. They paid $10 for the icon. Google paid nothing for the Google logo, this Google logo right here that we see all the time. Cost them $0. Do you see a pattern here? Nike. When Nike was founded, they paid some girl in a graphics artist class to create a logo for them. She came up with that swoosh and they paid $35. They've used it ever since. It's netted them billions of dollars as a result. Accenture spent $100,000 for their logo. The London Olympics spent $625,000 for their logo. The BBC, look at this. This is the BBC logo. They spent $1.8 billion or $1 million on that, or $1.8 billion on that. Was that a good investment? $1.8 million on this. Does that make sense? It's 3 letters in 3 boxes. It's 3 letters in 3 boxes. But do you get my point? BP, for this little logo right here, paid a fortune. Yeah, somebody overcharged for this one. Somebody grossly overcharged for this one, obviously. All right. Do you understand? A logo doesn't have to be expensive. It isn't how much you spend for it that makes it work, right? In fact, the real point is how much value you deliver, not what your logo looks like. And this is kind of a deflating ego thing, but it's really what you deliver. It's really the value that you bring, not the logo that you have. It's the value that you bring to the logo that makes the difference. And yeah, there's some exclusivity that gets associated now. It's because in the evolution of these things, people have realized that there's a fortune to be made on this, and then they hire lawyers to make sure that this doesn't get mimicked or copied or anything else done with it. So that's what ends up happening over time. The other thing that we need to clear up a misconception about logos is that they evolve. Logos evolve. This was Uber's original. This is Uber's original logo. And this is their current logo. This was Airbnb's original logo. This is their current logo. You also notice a trend here. What's the trend that you see from here to here and here to here? What's the trend? You see a really obvious trend. We'll take two more here in just a minute. Simplicity. The obvious trend is there's a trend towards simplicity. That was the point I was trying to make earlier, was that we're going to show you something in just a minute. Well, what becomes really obvious is that simplicity reigns when it comes to logos. And you can see the evolution that takes place. This was originally Uber Cab. Now it's just Uber. This was originally Air, Bed, and Breakfast. Now it's Airbnb. What's happening to those longer words? What's happening to them? Are the longer words, the longer logos, the longer names getting shorter? Now, the name is in the logo, right? Makes sense. The name's in the logo. But you notice that as they got shorter, they got simpler, and they got easier to identify. Yeah, goldfish attention spans. Facebook was originally called The Facebook, and this was their original logo right here. This is it today. What happened? It got simpler. They ditched the image in the background. They made this easy, right? Google was originally called Backhub. Now they're Google. But do you see the transition here, that we've gone from more complex and more complicated logos to very simple. Simplicity is the key here. And there is an evolution that takes place. Uber continued to fulfill their promise. Airbnb continued to fulfill their promise. Facebook continued to fulfill their promise. Backhub continued to fill its promise when it became Google. But in every case, they kept the promise. They kept the brand promise and the value that they brought. Yes, Jesse, these are recorded. And they kept the value that they had. They kept delivering on their promise, and they kept making things simpler as they went. Really important to understand that about logos. That brings me to the next thing, and that is that the brand name actually matters more than the logo, right? The brand name can matter more than the logo. Look at this right here. Keep that in mind. We went from Uber Cab to Uber. We went from Air, Bed, and Breakfast to Airbnb. But the name itself got shorter, but the name does communicate something, right? So the name, I really believe that the brand name matters more than the logo does. So let's talk about how we're going to create that logo, because you need to create a logo. You need to have worked through your worksheets and created a logo so that you can make this work, okay? So the first thing that you want to do is you want to choose a type of logo. Now, remember what we just looked at over here. So as you choose the type of logo, keep that in mind, that we've gone from more complex to more simple. So choose a type. And in order to do that, there's three things that you need to have. You need to review your brand brief. Take a look at that brand brief. Remember the brand worksheet that we had? And I'm going to open up that link in just a little bit. And I'm going to walk through each one of those. But you want to have three things. You want to have your brand brief. You want to make sure that you have in front of you what your brand promise is and how you're going to fulfill that. Okay? How many of you have that done? Thank you, Art. How many of you have that done? So if you have your brand brief and you have that in front of you, you know what that promise is. Remember, what your logo is it's communicating what my brand promise is. Choose your dominant color. And so you take that dominant color and you incorporate that into your brand, because the reason for the dominant color is it communicates an emotion that you want to evoke. So you need to have that dominant color that's there. And then finally, you need to select your typeface. We selected type. selected 5 different typefaces last week, and one of them was going to be your logo type, right? So in order to create your logo, you need to have the following things: your brand brief, you need to have your dominant color, you need to have your typeface. Next, you're going to decide how you're going to get it done. Am I going to do this myself, or am I going to have somebody else do it for me? Very, very important. And then finally, there's some key outcomes. And there's 3 things that you need to have if you're going to have somebody else do it for you, or there's 3 things you need to have if you're going to do it for yourself. And that is, first of all, you need to have a full color version of it. This is a full color version right here. You need to have, and it needs to be on a transparent, pink transparent background, okay? But you need to have the full color version. You need to have a version that will look good on a black background, okay? Which means that you should have a white version of that as well as a color version of it on a transparent background, a PNG file, okay? And then you need to have a white version and a black version. So there's 3 things right here that you need to have. You need to have the full color version. You need to know how that's going to look on a black background. And then you need to have these other 2, a white version and a black version. Because there's going to be times when you're going to need to place that logo on a dark background of some type. And there's going to be times when you're going to need to place that on a white background and or something that's going to require a black rendition of that. So there's 3 key outcomes that you need to have. All right. One more thing I will say here, and then we're going to change platforms for a minute. One more thing, and that is that you want to make sure if you're going to have somebody else do this for you, that they're not doing it in 240 pixels by 122 pixels. You want this to be big enough that you can put it on your t-shirts, that you can put it in places where it needs to go, okay? What I do, I open up my canvas to 3,000 pixels wide, and I start there. Now, it's not going to be 3,000 pixels high, but I start at 3,000 pixels. I want to get because I'm going to use Usign to create mine. If I were using Photoshop, I'd probably do it at 6,000 pixels. The t-shirt size pixels should always be 300 dots per inch, and you should at least, like I said, I always make mine as big as possible, and I might have to put a couple of pieces together to make it work on a t-shirt, and I use as big a pixels as I can possibly get. Because if I make it smaller, I don't worry about it. I don't worry about degradation, okay? And I don't. So if I start at 3,000 pixels, then what's going to happen is if I put it on a t-shirt, it's going to look fine. The resolution is going to be fine. I'm not going to get an image degradation. If I start at 600 pixels, it's going to look great everywhere I put it on the web, but I won't be able to put it on a t-shirt because I'll end up with image degradation. Does that make sense? That's why. That's why as big as possible. Easy to reduce, impossible to enlarge. So for me, it's just simpler to start at 3,000 pixels and make it smaller. Okay. All right. Any other questions about that before we go? Because I'm going to change my screen here in just a second, if we're all done. But do you understand what I'm talking about here about having the three different versions? One that looks good on black, one that looks good on white, and then a full color version. All right, if we're all good with that, I'm going to stop sharing this screen and I'm going to move to the next one. You'll give me just a second to do this. All right, I have dropped all of those assets for this in this page right here. I've given you that page a time or two. Yeah, Don said he runs into that problem all the time, and I'm assuming that the problem you're talking about is that you end up with an image degradation because your size is too small. And not that you did that. Oftentimes, that's the stuff that people will give you, and it's like, oh my goodness, how am I supposed to make this work? This is the link, has all these assets in here, even has a video right here, very short video showing you how to copy this, this brand sheet. Okay, so any one of these brand sheets right here, these are the things, and you want to make sure that you have these available to you. And then I've taken that brief brand design, or that brand design brief that we have in Usign, and I'm giving you that link right here. So all of your assets are right here. And then because we've covered those, turn this background blue. These are the things that we're working on today. We're going to talk about places where you can get your logo done. And so you can actually have somebody else do the logo for you. And here are some places where you can do that. Even my hosting company now does logos. And so don't spend a lot of money on it. And that's the reason why we've given you these places where you can go and have someone create a logo for you so you can get it done in a hurry. Now, we've been working on my particular brand, and we've been doing that for a reason, just because it was easy for me to do and easy for us to work through that. And so you want to make sure, I want to make sure if I'm going to have somebody create the logo for me, I want to make sure that I have available to them this brand strategy worksheet, the brand colors, and the typefaces. These are the three things that I will need to make sure that I give them to somebody, okay? Now, anytime that I add things to this, like next week, I'll add the assets for next week, then all you'll have to do is just refresh this page and those assets will show up over here, okay? Make sense? Is that going to be easier for everybody? And I got a ton of questions last week, so I added a chat button over here. So if you have a question, and rather than bogging down Usign's support system with a question having to do with what we're covering in the webinar, just simply use this little chat button over here, and that goes directly to me, and you don't have to worry about bogging down the support system, because I've had people ask questions about into Usign support about the replays and those kinds of things. So let's just do the. It's actually not automated. It purposefully goes to my phone so that wherever I'm at, I can answer that question in a rather live fashion. Okay. All right. So there is, and yeah, it's very simple. I just dropped these on a page so that they would be easy to update and refresh and keep all the assets in one spot. So there's some places where we can go to get a logo done, and we can pay for that. So I'm going to click on Fiverr here, and I'm going to take you to a Fiverr link. And this one happens to be about logo creators. So this is what I would do. Once I have picked my logo style, then I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to take a look at to see if I find things that kind of match up with what. And you know, this was that word mark. This was a word mark type logo. This with the combination with an icon and a word. And so I'm looking for people who do that, right? That's the kind of thing I'm looking for. Now you can use Logosign. It's just for this purpose, we want to show you how you can pay somebody else to do that. That's the purpose of today's webinar, is to show you how you can pay somebody else to do that. and this combination is what Logosign was designed for. It was designed to bring icons into the word mark piece. Okay. So, but you can go here and you can have somebody create a logo for you. And so you just simply scroll through here and find people who do the kind of thing that you're looking for. All right. That's how I would do this. And then you can see what the costs are here. You know, starts at $15, starts at $20. And then you want to find out, let's just click on one of these and we'll find out what this person does. Okay. Hey, Douglas. All right. So let's take a look at this. Well, crud. We'll take a look at this logo right here, and we'll get a chance to see the other person's work, okay? This person focuses on iTunes and podcast logos, cover art, that kind of thing. These are great for podcast logos, but that may not be what I want. So let's take a step backwards, and let's see what else we can find here. And see, this guy says I create custom band music or DJ logos. If that's what I was looking for, then that's probably who I would look at as being able to hire to do a logo for me. Do you understand why we gave you this? So you can see here, I designed typography, type brands, and music and DJ logos. I'll design the perfect logo for you. So let's take a look at this one here, just for fun. And let's scroll through it. I personally, again, we're back to that simplicity thing. I like the simplicity of the logos that I see here. And if I was going to have somebody create a unique logo for me, I would probably stick with these really easy, simplistic ideas. And if nothing else, as Bob just said, it's a great place to stimulate ideas, you know? I like it. Do you see how the logo here communicates what the logo is intended to communicate? Space box. And by having that outlined lettering, do you get the space idea of that? Or how about pond over here? So these are the kind of, so that's the reason why you want to have the assets available that we've worked on already, you know, like your brand brief, those kinds of things, because that helps me to figure out what it is that I'm going to communicate to this person over here. So then you go over here and look at this, you get printable and high quality file size. And then down here, you get a JPEG format like this. 300 pixels by 300 pixels by 300 DPI. That's what we were talking about earlier. Remember, you're trying to figure out what kind of assets you're looking for, right? And so down here, you're going to see, and that's what Art's just saying right here. Make sure you get the AI and EPS file formats from your designer for long-term flexibility. And you see those assets right here, okay? I'm looking to see, what do I get back? What do I get in exchange for the $20 I'm going to pay for that one logo? Well, I'm going to get a JPEG format. I'm going to get a transparent background format, which is really important. Even if I have to pay them for three versions of that transparent format, I want to make sure that I get the three outputs that we talked about a while ago. I want to have the full color version. I want to have a black version. I want to have a white version, right? And then here you also get the rest of this. You get the AI format, you get the EPS format, and you get the PDF format, right? What's their style? Flat style, minimalist. Just like this, Robin. This is a reason why we're going through. Robin asked, how do we select somebody who's good on Fiverr? Just like this. You just go in here, you take a look, what is my output going to be right here? Take a look at, I might be able to see what other kinds of work that they've done. They got 3 orders in the queue. That tells me that they're busy. Over here, I get the, I get some other important concepts about this. I get the initial concept gets included, the source file, the logo transparency, and high resolution are my outputs. And so I'm looking what kind of, and for that, I spend $20. If the $20, if it's a home run, then I've spent a total of $20. If I haven't, then I won't go back to this person again. But I'm going to look down here, and I'm going to see this person hasn't been doing this on Fiverr for very long. That doesn't mean they haven't been doing it for a long time, but it just doesn't mean that they've been doing it on Fiverr for very long. All I searched for to find this person, it's a really good question. All I searched for to find this person was this is the logo section on Fiverr, and I made sure that this button right here goes to the logo section on Fiverr. All right, made that easy for you. So it goes to goes to that section. I'm looking for something that kind of matches what I'm looking for in style. right? This is one of those abstract logos. Do I want an abstract logo? If I do, then I'm going to look at this person right here. So I select that. And listen, we're using the same language. We're all using the same language. So they're talking about an abstract logo. I gave you abstract a while ago. This was talking about minimalist, and so I gave you those really. But do you understand what we're talking about here? That's how you go about finding that. Yeah, Stephen, I would find out if there is if I can get all three versions, color, black and white, and black and white. Those are three versions, not two. But I'd find out if I could get those three for $20. If not, that person that we were looking at right here. Notice that this person is this one right here? Yeah, no, that's the abstract logo. Sorry. This person right here, which was the minimalist design. What you want to look for here is to find out and take a look at this. And you can communicate with them and ask those questions. Right here, I can contact the seller and find out. Can I get a full color version, a black version, and a white version of that exact same logo? You only have to do it once, but I get three versions of it. If so, would that be $20 or $25? Whatever it costs. Okay, but you're trying to communicate with them and find out. It's okay to ask a couple of questions. All right. You can look at some of the work that they've done. All right. These are other people that fit that same kind of design. All right. Does that make sense? So that's how you go about selecting somebody on Fiverr. A little more expensive. And a step up from that is Brandmark.io. Right here. And again, same kind of thing. And you can communicate with the logo creator and so on. And you can customize and export your logo. But it's a little more expensive to do that. Then here it shows some of the latest creations. And again, this kind of fits in that combination mark category where I've included a logo with the word branding. But this is another option that you have. Do you see a pattern here though? And the pattern is that these are really simple. Really simple. I like this. I really do. All right, any questions about that? But that's another option that you have. So you can go here, create a logo, do that. A little more expensive than you're going to find on Fiverr. A little bit more involvement with the designer through the process. Then the final one that I have here for you, there's lots of other places. Like I said, even my graphics, even my hosting company does graphics now. They have a graphic capability of being able to do logos. They focus on logos. All right. And so this is Hatchful. This is from Shopify. This is pretty simple. You pick a logo from various templates. And again, same kind of thing. You're doing the same kind of thing here. Create a professional logo in a few minutes. I wanted you to see this because I want you to see that your logo is going to be used in a lot of places. And I mean that literally. It's going to be used in a lot of places. And so you want to think about how's that going to look when it's on a lot of places. Understand? It's going to be in a business card. It's going to be, and these are all various kinds of business cards that are here. It's going to be on my letterhead. It's going to be on my packaging. It's going to be on my stationery cover. That just it's going to be in a lot of places, and so I want to think about how's it going to look when it's in those places. And you can see the reviews here of how that looked. I like this. This is a great presentation of logos, by the way. You pick them based upon the design by industry. Right? Again, great presentation and so on. All right, any questions so far? All right, remember you're going to need those if you're doing it for yourself. If you're creating your own logo, then what you want to do is you want to have those 3 pieces in front of you. You want to have that brand worksheet that we did. You want to have that in front of you. You want to have that customer hero in front of you. You want to think about who that customer is, and you want to make sure that you have those. You want to make sure that you have these assets, your brand color and your typefaces. And so you want these 3 things right here in front of you as you think through, what do I want to create for my logo? And it doesn't really make any difference whether you do it yourself or you have somebody else do it, but they're going to want to know the same thing that's in these 3 things right here in order to create a brand for you. Okay, so make sure that you have that. If you decide to have somebody do it for you, then you have at least these options available to you, and a search of the internet, you'll find some other places as well. I can tell you with some confidence, I've used Fiverr several times. I've used Fiverr with a number of customers that I've had. I've used Brandmark with a number of customers that I've had, and they've created, we've created logos from there. I have not used Hatchful by Shopify, although I do find it a very fascinating service that's provided. All right, we're about to wrap up. Any questions so far? Logo is going to be important. Remember, it can evolve. What can't evolve is probably going to be that name. Okay, your brand name. After a couple of years, you can't really change it. When I developed the brand, Eric said, it came directly from the fact that I was speaking across the country, and I was a workshop leader, a conference speaker, a keynote speaker, that kind of a thing. And so what we discovered was, and I told you this before, your brand is oftentimes what people say about you after you left. Well, people were quoting me, so it became known as Eric Said. And that just kind of stuck as a brand. I use it to this day, even though my business has evolved from that speaking, because I can't do that as much as I used to. I can tell you at one time I spoke in 32 cities in 37 days. That was a lot of work. But Eric Said became that brand, and pretty soon you can't really change that. You just kind of stay with it, and it communicates kind of that the whole purpose is to coach and to direct people. So, and so I stuck with it and use it to this day, and will continue to use it for the rest of my days. So, but that's the development of the name. The name becomes important. People will remember the name, even though the logo may evolve a little bit. The name Eric Said is really brief. It's one word. Again, it was easy to make that one word. Kind of fits all of those strategies that we wanted to include into your logo. All right. Any questions about that before we go? All right, we will be back here next week, and we will pick up with the next step in the process. And then in 2 weeks, I will be at my grandson's, although he will be in school. So I will be doing the webinar from my grandson's condominium, and as soon as I get done, I get to pick him up from school, and we'll have a great time. But that's what's coming up. We're going to finish this chunk out on having all of those assets together, so we're ready to create that amazing brand that will help you to be able to communicate to the world what you do and give the value that you promise that you're going to get. All right. Have a great week. See you back here next Friday, same time, same place. In the meantime, have a wonderful, wonderful Valentine's Day.